that if we are not a consistent, safe person, that they're not going to know how to manage that in the same environment either. Because I know one of the great gifts that my parents gave me, especially my mom, is that she was a very consistent person. She is a very consistent person in my life. And I went through some things, as we all do, growing up, and when she's able just to kind of like sit there and listen to you and be like, it's going to be okay. Like just saying that to a kid and allowing them to experience that feeling in that moment gives you that assurance, like that it's going to be okay the next time too.
Yes.
But when we maybe have a strong emotional reaction with them, we're back at it, then it's not giving them that assurance, like, do I have a safe place to go then when I'm feeling like, really out of control here, for this experience, happened to me, a couple times, like didn't get the position I thought I was going to, or somebody got the job and I didn't, and these kind of things, which was kind of like, you feel like the whole world's over, especially as a kid, since you really don't have much perspective. That's a problem we're having in the seminary too. Like we'll have a guy come in young and not very emotionally mature, a lot less these days than before too. And they'll transgress maybe majorly in something, or they'll mess up with something, and then they run. They just leave. They're like, I'm out of here. I can't do this. I'm not perfect. It's like, stop for a second. Like, yeah, you're not perfect, and that's okay. Like, and God's not calling you because you are perfect, like, but he's calling you because you're you. And if he's really calling you, stay, like, and let's work through this, and let's not do that. But we, I think, have such a stigma in our world too, that like failure is so looked down upon. Like, but failure is a value, failure is that's the stuff that character is made out of,
Yeah.
My favorite scripture, Romans 5, it says that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope doesn't disappoint because the love of God has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
And that's that progression that we have to go through in our lives. Like, we're going to go through the sufferings, we're going to go through the disappointments, we're going to go through the all those kind of different things, but like to know that when we can endure those, that endurance is important. There's that resilience comes up, and that builds the character. Like we can actually go into a situation and say, this is okay. Like I have some sort of reality here, some perspective to say, okay, like this is okay. And then the hope comes from that. Like, this is not my whole life. My whole life isn't defined by the job I didn't get or did get, or the award I did or didn't get, but identity and belonging. Yeah.
And I think that comes down, I think as Catholics we can use the term vocation. And what vocations, and I don't just mean to the priesthood or the diaconate, but I mean to married life, single life, to being a therapist, to being a lawyer, to being a youth minister. And I think a lot of times is we don't give people those places to discern that. And then our society as a whole puts value on particular vocations, whether it's monetary or praiseworthy. Whereas, you may not be the best soccer player, but you're a great artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? You're a great artist. And or you may not be great at math, but you are so empathetic that you're drawn to a profession like therapy. And we don't put value on that. I think a large part of humanity is wanting us to feel valued, is wanting us to feel that support, to feel that we're worth something. And I think in like we were saying earlier, is that Instagram, and I think I'm definitely guilty of this, but we place our best self in these pictures. Our best situations, very rarely is it like, I've had a crappy day.
Yeah.
And I think we have these Instagram models, we have Instagram people who are, what's the term? The influencers.
Oh, right.
That are presenting that. And there's been a slight change. I think some of them are presenting more real things, but if that's what's valued and value isn't placed on other things, we kind of lose ourselves, or we're not finding our identity. And I think a large part of youth and youth ministry and adolescence is that identity building. And obviously that's where they're at in their lives, if we bring it back to the retreats, is where do I find worth? Where do I find praise? And what gets me those things? How do I build on that?
It's kind of
crazy because when I talk to kids separately than parents, if I ask kids to tell me what your parents would say they love the most about you, describe, how would your parents describe you? So the kids will usually start with what they do. I'm good at soccer. I'm good at math. I'm smart. And then whenever I ask the parents, they actually will start with who their kids are. They're funny. They're kind. They always tell the truth. They're patient. And so I think sometimes we just need to remind ourselves as parents also to separate out, there's this idea of kind of what we do and this idea of who we are, but who we are, a virtue, noticing in our kids, kind of, I feel like personality is divine, it's pretty much God's fingerprints on us. It's kind of our nature and how we are. And so to notice God in those pieces and not always put such on what we're doing, we won this, did this, but noticing more just who we are as people. And who we are as people, usually then, hopefully that discernment leads us to what eventually we kind of do, but.
Yeah, I'm going to speak to that.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I'm going to speak to what you both had.
Yeah.
Isaiah made a good point about the technology, the Instagram, kind of people seeking, I might want to have that identity. It looks good. Everyone putting their best pictures forward. But truly, I believe that the family, like you were mentioning, the family is where you begin to get your identity. It really is.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed is even though kids push back, even in adolescence, the parents still have influence.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you said, when children describe what do my parents like about me, they say things like I'm the good soccer player, but the parents describe the virtue.
Yeah.
That's a disconnect.
Yeah.
That's a disconnect.
Yeah.
And so what I tell my parents is that very thing. What do you love about your child? You love them because they're yours.
Yeah.
That's really it.
Yes.
But how often do they say that?
Yeah.
You know,
I know.
but you're right.
Yeah.
So that's that has to come across.
Yeah.
And how does that come across?
Yeah.
How do you do that on the day-to-day? Right?
Many parents are afraid of speaking that way to their children.
That's right.
Somehow
Yeah.
I'm giving away some sort of myself when I say that. It's like, no, those are the words they need to hear,
Or maybe I'm giving away some of the power or,
What
or
is that,
whatever.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I like to see them do things together that are not about Jimmy becoming the star player. I try to find a common ground where they can be together, where they can embrace one another for just being family members.
Yes.
Like even a game night, Monopoly.
Yeah.
So you are enjoying one another's company. That goes a long way to building the self-esteem
Yeah.
of a young person,
Yeah.
right? And even into high school. So we're come on, the blueprint is the human metaphor, Father in heaven.
Yeah.
That's the Father. That's the model, right? Yeah. And the Holy Family. That's the model. So it's love. Love your family members for their virtues, for the things you notice, and in spite of the things that you don't like, right? And not necessarily for the fact that they are, on the debate team and they're the lead debater, or on, varsity basketball. That makes me sad to see that disconnect of the young people. Because I think that even though we have social media, if the parents began to do this and connect and, as Tim said, step up and speak to their kids about what they like about them that has nothing to do with their actions, you would begin to see it wouldn't matter quite as much what they see, because they are being, like you said, Isaiah, built up in their home before they go out into the world. So
the voice of negativity is very strong in all of our lives. I think, you can be praised all day long, and as soon as someone comes across with a critique, it like a knife, right? Boom, right there, right into your heart. And when I used to speak with, especially high school kids as a youth minister, I'd ask them, like, tell me 5 things about you, and they would first pause. They'd be like, and then they would start to list things, but they weren't virtue things. They weren't positive things. They were always things that they hated about themselves first. I was like, that's interesting. So tell me just 3 things that you would like about yourself, and many of them had a hard time coming up with just even 3 of them, And so when you frame it more open like that, it does reveal that piece of angst in there. And the world is always going to point out much more clearly. The kids are going to make fun of you for your failure. At school, they're gonna point out when your shirt's dirty because you dropped something on it or whatever. When you don't have the coolest shoes, So we're very critical of each other already. We live in a very critical world already, and they're going to be critical on social media even more than when we were growing up and didn't have a way to do that, not face to face, right? If I was going to be critical of somebody, I had to say it to them. I couldn't just send them a direct message about it and have this kind of separated experience, that really can kind of ruin a lot of people's lives these days. But this reality being that like our homes need to be sanctuaries of seeing the good.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Our homes need to be places
Yeah.
where we can speak the good to each other, because if we're only speaking the negative, they're not even going to hear the good. We can speak challenge too.
Yeah.
That can also be good.
That's
We
right.
have to. But if we're not speaking enough of the good, then they don't hear anything else. They're only going to ever hear that negative.
And the good
then-
has to be real, because kids are smart, and
Yeah.
if you fake give them a compliment, they're going to see right through it.
Yeah.
So you just have, if you're going to compliment them, it has to be something true and real from your heart.
Yeah.
And they know it, yeah. And then they'll hang on to that. That's like lasting stuff right there, guys. Like they cling to those things and they'll remember that when they're going through that other sad moment. Those are the enduring pieces. I always have to invite people back. Like I do a lot of spiritual direction with ministers, and I always invite them back to like why did you start this? Like, especially when they're in crisis moments of like, I'm out of here, don't ever be a Catholic again, or whatever, But like, go back, like, why do you love God? Like, what was your first moment of love with Him, and why do you love what you're doing? And like, we have to come back to those things, because we can get so overwhelmed by the negativity around, in our lives and so if we pull that out, like, we enforce that when we get home. Then our home becomes in that just a perpetuation of the world, and our homes cannot be a perpetuation of the world.
I like what you were saying, Cecilia, because just about like time, a game night, eating takeout together, eating dinner together, whatever it is, but real time to speak in, because I also find that I do think today's parents are spending a lot of time with their kids at events, but maybe where they're sitting 6 hours in a stand watching a game happen, but not necessarily engaging in conversation together. So we have these parents that are on the outside. It looks like they're very, they're with their kids dropping, this and that. But, I think somehow what's being missed still is that interaction, that the kids are really, and so much of even the playing sports is to get your parents' response or to get your, but it's like, I just see that is being missed somehow in all these parents that we're sitting for hours and hours underneath these, canopies watching hours and hours of games. And yet I don't know that we're still having the important letting our kids, know how we feel about them as much as we are watching them. I don't know.
Well, I'm guilty of it.
Yeah,
all my
same here.
kids, all
Same
my kids
here. I
played
know.
sports.
Yes.
And I spent
Yeah.
hours and hours
Yes.
watching tournament after tournament, lacrosse and volleyball and dance. But I agree with you. I mean, you are supporting your child on the one hand while they play sports, and you're in the stands rooting, giving them the occasional thumbs up.
Right.
But you are not interacting
Yes.
with them the same way you would be on a game night, where
Yeah.
you can have family banter,
Yes.
jokes, and
Yes.
building intimacies.
Yes.
There it is.
That is
Building
it.
family
That's it.
intimacy.
There's the key.
So that is just so important. And I just wanted to point out something that Tim said. Well, God, he was asking young people, say good things about yourself. For 17 years, I taught confirmation. I used to always do that. Say one thing good about yourself. And I had this little gal. She looked like Paris Hilton, just a beautiful little high school gal. And she had a scholarship to USC to play on the tennis team, full ride. And I said, say something good about yourself. And she said, there's nothing good. There's nothing good. And, later getting, reading about some psychologists, Erik Erikson is followed Freud. And he developed the 8 stages of development, human development in a lifespan. And he says in the high school years, in the adolescent years, there's a tension between confusion and identity, and you're seeking your identity, right? So you're confused and you're unsettled because you don't know who you are, and you're seeking to know who you are. And it gives angst and sometimes even depression if you don't have the blueprint there and you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Right? So during this time period, I even saw some research that showed the adolescent brain is extra sensitive. So I might say, Pam, I don't like the outfit you're wearing. That color doesn't look good on you. And she'd go, But if I said the same thing to a little gal or a little boy, teenager, an adolescent, they might be crushed because their brain is actually more sensitive, and the parent needs to know this, right? And so kind of helping them to find their identity. Where are you going to start? In the home, with the family. Yeah. And with the family, you begin to see what are the values of the family. What are the morals of the family? What are the likes and the dislikes of this person? Yeah. Instead of telling the child and the adolescent, you stay curious and help them. Yeah. And the more that they explore the family values in their home, the family morals, come to terms with what they believe, and explore what they like and dislike, then that's how they begin to form their identity. And that will actually lower anxiety and depression as they come to terms and form who they are with the support and the security of the family.
It's so important to this modeling that we're doing as parents, just by how we live and how we are with each other. And I was talking to someone that was a youth minister, and was kind of the youth have to write these letters to the bishop, and this particular youth was kind of saying that, the true gift of confirmation for him had been, for the first time, he really learned how to treat other people. He said, I just, the leaders that I had in my class, the way they treated us, the way they interacted with us, I just didn't realize that's how I was supposed to treat other people, and I mean, and so this youth minister was just kind of like, wow, I mean, like, this is like, our homes are classrooms. Like, this is the stuff that we have got to be, teaching our kids. And, and I know for me, sometimes, it's just like, oh my gosh, but no, you got to know how to throw a curveball, and you got to know how to throw this and that, and, all these other things for sports and this and that. But just some of these very basic ways of treating each other and are so foundational to and it comes from how we treat each other in our home. Do we say, you have to forgive this person now? Do we, all those things are telling children, how to act outside their homes, or how not to act. And it kind of just, I was thinking, well, gosh, what a gift this 17-year-old was given. But I was thinking, wow, I mean, what,
took till 17.
Yeah.
I mean.